Congressman Costello, you said the president has painted himself into a corner. You said he looked foolish by supporting He said he would look foolish by supporting Democratic legislation. So how does he get out of this without looking like he caved?
I don't think we're getting out of this anytime soon. I could see this going to the State of the Union. I think that
to the State of the Union?
I think he's only heightened the dispute. And you heard soon-to-be Speaker Pelosi say, not a dime for the wall. I think ultimately, if you look at what Senator Lamar Alexander had proffered in terms of the different ways out of this, but I think that they are not just semantically, but philosophically so far apart that you're not going to see a deal cut anytime in the near future.
Congresswoman Edwards, did Nancy Pelosi, though, also make a mistake by insisting no money for a wall? Did she box the Democrats in?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, this has been the position of Democrats going to before the shutdown. And what's really clear is that the Speaker is prepared today with a unified Democratic caucus to put legislation on the floor, pass it out of the House, send it over to the Senate, something that the Senate has already voted on, and then it will be in the hands of Mitch McConnell and Republicans to sit quietly with this president and say, you know, Mr. President, this is what the deal is, and then he can call it whatever he wants, but there is not going to be money for a wall. The Democratic caucus in the House and the Senate and many Republicans don't want this. The American people don't want a wall. Something like 35% of the American public wants a wall. So that's President Trump's crowd. But the rest of the American people want to open up government, want to get back to governing, and want this shutdown to end. And it's good. The end begins today.
Yeah, and I think Donna brings up something important, Brett, which is that Mitch McConnell, now granted, he's not the most verbose person to the media, but he wasn't out there yesterday after the meeting supporting the president's position, making his case. He got into his SUV and went away. And he was, in fact, one of the most pessimistic voices when he said this could go on for weeks. So how does this relationship work now going forward between McConnell and the president?
Well, I think McConnell wants to save his caucus. He wants to save his majority. It's going to be a difficult majority to defend in the next election. And quite frankly, Donald Trump looks like Cornwallis at Yorktown. He's put himself on a peninsula. He has to stand his ground, and it's not ground he's going to be able to defend easily because, as the Congresswoman mentioned just a few seconds ago, this wall is supported only by 35% or so of the American people. Now, that 35% happens to be a base that sees Trump as their defender, their guy, the guy who isn't going to cave. So Trump is not in a good position to compromise either or semantically or substantively without losing his grip on his own political base. The problem is that's not enough to win this argument, and certainly not enough to win re-election.
And the question always is sort of what is he listening to? Who is he listening to? If people are wondering why the president is so intractable on this, I think we got a pretty big clue from Lindsey Graham on Fox, saying publicly what I think Trump world has likely been telling him for a while now privately. Take a listen.
If he gives in now, that's the end of 2019 in terms of him being an effective president. That's probably the end of his presidency.
If he gives in now, Congressman Costello, that's probably the end of his presidency. What do you make of that?
I don't agree with that, but I still get back to the point. Let's not forget, he is the president. He will not sign a bill unless he feels there is a sufficient amount of money in there that he can say is dedicated to a wall. I agree with Brett. This may be a scenario where he gets border security money, Pelosi calls it one thing, Trump calls it a wall, and everybody sort of claims victory. But the government is going to stay shut down until he feels that he has a deal that he's willing to sign. And we cannot like the fact that he's focused on that 35%. But as the president, he has the right to do it, and I think that he will do it. He's been tested before, and he generally does not fade off positions like this, particularly a signature issue like him. Agree or disagree, that's where I think we are headed, and that's why I think that this is not going to get resolved anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning that budget standoffs are hardly anything new in Washington, D.C. They're not new to this president, but I think Congresswoman Edwards, when the Democratic leadership came out yesterday, my impression of them was they were fired up. They were united. And I think part of the frustration for them is just these arguments that Trump makes, like the wall is going to pay for itself. And apparently in that Situation Room meeting, he told Nancy Pelosi the reason she should back the wall is because she's a good Catholic and Vatican City is surrounded by a wall. And he had actually said something similar in the cabinet meeting. I want to play that for you.
Look, when they say the wall's immoral, well, then you got to do something about the Vatican, because the Vatican has the biggest wall of them all.
I mean, Congresswoman Edwards, how do you negotiate with that?
I just don't even know where to go with that. I mean, here's the thing. The president actually began the year where he ended it with a series of lies about Mexico having already paid for the wall, about the wall being built already, about, you know, a staggering number of people who are here in the country illegally 3 times. I think he said something like 35 million people here illegally, which is just an absolute lie. And so I think that on this, you know, the negotiation really has to be between the House and the Senate. And the president is going to, I mean, the president will go out and call it what he wants anyway, no matter what it is. And so he's not going to be able to sustain having this government shut down. And the pain of that is just being felt. Those paychecks for federal workers have to be cut January 12th. And people are really already starting, and more of those stories that come out, this is not going to be sustainable. So it doesn't end well for the president. He needs to end it now.
Yeah, and I got the impression, maybe I'm overreading the body language and what the Democrats had to say when they came out of that meeting, but they did indeed seem like they felt they were in a winning position. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that time that Nancy Pelosi came out of the Oval Office and she put on her, oh, this is it. And she put on her sunglasses and they made a meme out of it, and people were saying that is a power move right there. I mean, Brett, the Democrats have struggled with playing a winning hand. You know, sometimes in the past they haven't exactly had their messaging together. Not this time, I think. And I wonder, as I looked at that meme, but also when she came out yesterday from the Oval Office, has this backfired on Republicans in that the shutdown actually seems to make Nancy Pelosi more powerful?
Sure, and I mean, first of all, she is powerful. She controls the purse of the United States by running the House of Representatives. But she's powerful because she is the voice now of normal government. She is the voice of continuity. She's the voice of paying our civil servants, our government workers, the salaries
of experience
that they deserve. And that's exactly where the Democratic Party wants to be. Not the party that's shouting, not the party of resistance, but the party of normalcy. And she represented that right there.
And let me offer a Republican perspective here. I would suggest that there are fractures within the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And one thing that you would like to do at the start of a new session of Congress as a Republican is to highlight what those fractures are, right? And it's been reported, but it will not be reported to the extent that we have a government shutdown. And by allowing an issue such as the wall, which is a clear unifier for every part of the Democratic Party, those that are oppose it on a moral ground and those who say there's better ways to go about securing the border, what I think has politically happened is you've given the Democrats an issue for all of them to unify around, and no one's talking about whether or not Nancy Pelosi is going to have enough votes on the floor today, because the way that she has navigated this has enabled her to be someone who unifies and creates solidarity within the House.
But there's been no question for weeks that Nancy Pelosi is going to have enough votes on the floor today. That was not in question. And actually what unifies Democrats is a set of values, even when there are differences on policies. And so I think you're going to see going forward on a number of issues a very strong and unified Democratic Party, and it's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the House of Representatives. So, you know, game's on.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.